All right, all right, all right. You ready? Yeah, okay, good. Excellent. Yeah, I think so, yeah. Have to be ready. So you just have to make yourself ready. It's one of those interesting things about life is that you have to change your perceptions always, yeah? So sometimes you maybe don't want to do something or something doesn't seem like fun, so you change your attitude and then it's okay. It's all about perception, and about using your mind skillfully. That's what it's all about. So now we are going to look at the practice of metta. So we have been looking at the various ways, why it is important, how it applies in various contexts. And we have seen that there's a lot of suttas about this. Yeah, I mean, we have been going through I don't know how many suttas already, fairly fast, but that's okay. Sometimes you can go quite fast because the content is not super profound, but it's obviously important in the Dhamma. That's kind of coming out of this very clearly. And having established the importance, having established a few of the areas, we can now ready to kind of look more in detail at the practice. This is obviously the most important part of this. What do we actually have to do? And I think the most interesting part, once you are convinced, I hope you're convinced by now that this is important. If you're not convinced by now, then I'm not sure how you're going to get convinced. So you're convinced. Okay, good. I'm glad. At least some of you are piping up that you're convinced. That's great. So once they have that conviction, then the practice becomes easy. And that is, I think, one of the very important points about learning some of the theory of the Dhamma. Once you gain that sense of conviction and faith and confidence that these teachings really matter, that they work, that they are possible, that they can be done, and then the practice happens almost automatically from that. You start doing it. And so understanding theory is not without benefit. Yeah, it can be very beneficial. And so reviewing all of these things are actually important, and that creates the foundation for what we're going to see next. So let us come to the idea of the practice of love, or the practice of metta, or the practice of friendliness, or however you want to call it. Now, too often in Buddhist practice, we focus on the meditation part. Yeah, we say Buddhism is all about meditation, and that is what we focus on. We do metta meditation, may all beings be happy, these kind of things, which all is good stuff. But that is not where metta begins. Friendliness does not begin in the meditation. In fact, if we start our friendliness with meditation practice, very often we will not succeed because it's just too hard. May all beings be happy and nothing really happens. You don't feel anything and you think, okay, whatever, I'll just do it because I'm a Buddhist or whatever. And it doesn't really give any good result. It becomes like a ritual that you do. It doesn't have any real effect. And so very often we need to start the metta meditation with even more basic things, more simple things. And the more we build up those basic ideas of metta, the more easy it is to do the metta meditation. It starts to give real results. And so we want to start with the foundations of metta. One foundation of metta is actually the right view, that it is important. This is what we have been looking at now. That right view then becomes the basis for our intention. We want to do the practice, that becomes the intention. And once the intention is there, then we can look at the details. And if you follow the Noble Eightfold Path, you can see I'm following the Noble Eightfold Path now, starting with right view, then the right intention. The next part is right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And so we need to we need to do the metta at those aspects of the path. That's what we kind of want to do next. One of the aspects of right intention, this is the samma sankappa, is the metta sankappa. Or the avyapada, the non-ill will, or the metta intention. That is a big part of the intention. So the three kinds of right intention is the non-ill will, non-harming, and renunciation. Or you can say the opposite of those, which basically means metta, compassion, and maybe contentment or something like that. So it is right there in right intention, part of right intention, and then from there it moves into the actual practice. So what are some of the simple ways of thinking about the aspect of metta? And we find one of my favorite suttas that talks about this. And we have actually looked at this sutta in brief already during the first part of this retreat. Now we're going to look at it again in more detail. And this is Majjhima Nikaya number 48, the Kosambiyasutta. So let us get onto this sutta. So here we have the first part of the sutta we're going to look at. And it goes as follows. So I have heard. At one time the Buddha was staying near Kosambi in Gosita's monastery here. Now at that time the mendicants of Kosambi were arguing, quarreling and disputing, continually wounding each other with barbed words, with harsh words. They couldn't persuade each other or be persuaded, nor could they convince each other or be convinced. So this is a very important event in the history of early Buddhism. This is known as the quarrel at Kosambi, or argument at Kosambi. And it's very important because it is the first time that the Sangha kind of was split in a sense. And we all know that the splitting of the Sangha is considered one of the really bad things. If you divide the Sangha, if you are the cause of a schism in the Sangha, as a monastic, as a monk actually, only the monks apparently are capable of doing that, it is karma that leads you straight to rebirth in hell. Yeah, so very bad consequences of doing that. And so this is one of the early examples of the Sangha almost being split. And this is why this became a very famous event in the history of Buddhism. And then you start reading the suttas, you start to see that there are a number of suttas that actually revolve around this point. One is this particular sutta. Another very important sutta is the Upakilesa Sutta that we had to look at a verse from before. It gives many details you don't find in this sutta. It is also spoken about at length in the Vinaya Pitaka, because the Vinaya Pitaka deals with all the regulations and rules, and so schism, obviously there's a lot of rules around schism because it's so problematic. So there's a whole chapter in the Vinaya just about this. You find verses about this event in the Dhammapada. You find other suttas, such as the Chula Gosingawud Sutta, which also talks about the three monks, Anuruddha, Kimbila and Nandiya, and is related to this somehow. So there's a lot of, this was obviously a traumatic time in the Sangha. And this takes place in Kosambi. Kosambi is a little bit on the side of where the Buddha usually wanders. Gosita's monastery, Gosita is the donor of the monastery. And Kosambi being one of the great cities of ancient India, 6 great cities, it was one of them. And so all the great cities would have monasteries. And maybe because it was a little bit on the outer, it wasn't really the central part of what the Buddha was teaching. Maybe that is why it was easier for argument to arise there. Maybe because they, they were far away, not really connected to the Dhamma quite as strongly as the other places. I'm not sure. So this argument arises, and I mentioned before how this argument kind of started out. They were arguing about some trifling issue about whether you should leave some water in a pitcher in the toilet or not. And this became like a massive argument. Have we committed an offense? Have we not committed an offense? You have committed it. No, you have committed. And kind of back and forth like this. And then after a while, the Sangha taking sides. So we get one part of the Sangha on one side, the other part on the other side. And it blows up out of proportion. And then they asked the Buddha to come and help resolve. And you see here how it is explained. They're arguing, quarreling, disputing, continually wounding each other with the swords of the mouth, the knives of the mouth, mukha danta, I think is what they used. So the barbed words, the swords of the mouth. And they can't persuade each other, so it kind of keeps on going. And then they invite the Buddha, as I mentioned before, to help sort it out. And then the Buddha comes and says, please, don't argue. Actually, I think it is here. Is it here? I can't remember. I haven't looked now. Let me look before I say. Yeah, there you are. So there you are. So he's right there. So I might as well read it rather than tell the story in that case. Then the mendicant went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and told him what was happening. And then the Buddha addressed a certain monk, "Please, monk, in my name, tell those mendicants that the teacher summons them." "Yes, sir," that monk replied. He went to those monks and said, "Venerables, the teacher summons you." "Yes, Reverend," those monks replied. They went to the Buddha, bowed down, sat down to one side, and the Buddha said to them, "Is it really true, mendicants, that you have been arguing, quarreling, disputing, continually wounding each other with barbed words, and that you can't persuade each other or be persuaded, nor can you convince each other or be convinced?" "Yes, sir," they replied. "What do you think, mendicants? When you are arguing, quarreling, disputing, and continually wounding each other with barbed words, are you treating your spiritual companions with kindness? This is metta, by way of body, speech, and mind, both in public and in private?" "No, sir." This is the problem. You're not fulfilling your virtue. You're not fulfilling the idea of metta, which should be the foundation for your meditation and everything else. So it's a bad idea. Yeah. So the Buddha is asking this question, which gets to the heart of the Buddhist practice. That's why he's asking it in this way. I'll get back to some of the individual words here afterwards. So it seems that when you are arguing, you're not treating each other with kindness. So what exactly do you know and see, you foolish men, that you behave in such a way? This will be for your lasting harm and suffering. So this is the beginning. I will stop there because now it begins with the kind of the core aspect of the sutta. And then you see, as you see in Majjhima Nikaya 128, the Upakilesa Sutta, the Sutta on corruptions, that when the Buddha says this, he also adds, "Please stop arguing." And then the monks say, "Oh, don't worry, just let it be. We will be known for our foolish actions, and you just please go and meditate, Venerable Sir." And so that happens 3 times, and then the Buddha, can't change them, so he leaves, and it goes on this kind of long tour after that, because he can't sort them out. But before he does that, it seems like he teaches this particular sutta, which we're going to look at now. This is kind of the sutta that, one of the things that came out of this, the kind of qualities that we should have for each other to be able to live in harmony, the 6 warm-hearted qualities, as it is called. So we're going to delve into this. Is there anything? No, I think we can maybe come back to some of these things later on. But that is the kind of the root problem and the root issue. And why we should be practicing differently. So let's see what the Buddha has to say to overcome such disharmony. Then the Buddha said to the mendicants, "Mendicants, these 6 warm-hearted qualities make for fondness and respect, conducive to inclusion, harmony, unity without quarreling." What 6? Warm-hearted quality, saraniya dhamma. And it's a nice way of translating it. The idea is to have a sense of warmth, warm feelings towards your fellow companions. And those warm feelings, they make for fondness. You are fond of your spiritual companions. Fondness, I'm not sure. I think the word here is piya, which means like they are dear to you, they are important to you. So being fond of each other, having a sense of dearness and agreeableness and love and these kind of things, these are appreciation and affection. All of this is part of the right kind of attitude in the Dhamma. You see your fellow Buddhist in the right way. So fondness and respect going together. It's not just a fondness that we kind of like them, but we also respect them. And the respect is something that arguably you should have towards every human being in a certain way, but certainly those who practice in the right way we should have respect for, because we know that they are kind of heading in the right direction, doing what is helpful for themselves and others. So this beautiful mix of respect and affection coming together. Yeah, sometimes you can respect someone, but maybe you are a bit fearful of them. Sometimes you can be fond of someone, but don't really respect them. But when the two come together, it's very nice. Respect means you appreciate them as a person, someone to be looked up to perhaps, someone to be emulated, someone who has the same values as you are. So you kind of listen to what they have to say because you respect them. You take them seriously. But it's not just that. At the same time, you also have the heart quality. So it's both the intellectual quality and the heart quality coming together. And this is a very important aspect of Buddhism, this kind of two sides of the coin, the intellect and the heart coming together. So much of the Dhamma is about that. If it is pure intellect, it's cold. It doesn't really drive you on the path. It doesn't make anything. It doesn't give you a sense of urgency. It doesn't do anything to you. If you just are intellectual Buddhist or just coming from confidence. On the other hand, if you just come from the heart and you just have kind of metta qualities, then you may not have enough appreciation of the teaching to really be able to persevere in the long run because you haven't really understood. You might very well be easily persuaded by others of different views or whatever. But when the two come together, then you have the driving force of the faith and the fondness on the one hand, and then have the guidance of the respect and the right view on the other hand. One gives the guidance, what is the direction, and the other one gives you the propulsion, the fuel that keeps you going. And you can see this, for example, in qualities such as saddha. Saddha, often translated as faith. But faith is not quite adequate, because saddha has just this double mutual two sides to it. On the one hand, confidence, which to my mind is also a nice translation, but also limited. And really we should combine faith and confidence. Then you get a balanced view of what saddha is about. Saddha means you listen to the Buddha. Wow, you appreciate the teaching. This is true. The highest saddha is when you become a stream enter. You see the teaching for yourself. Then you can't really call that faith anymore because you have know for yourself. So it becomes more like confidence. But that confidence, because you understand the urgency of the teachings and why they matter so much, they give you that visceral feeling that you have to do something. And that is what is often called faith in the English language. Faith is this feeling. Faith is often blind. It often doesn't have any understanding, but it's emotionally very powerful. So confidence and faith coming together. This is what saddha is. And this is what we're also seeing here. Fondness and respect is just another way of thinking about these two sides of the understanding the Dhamma. So when we have these things, you can see why this is getting very powerful now, because it creates the engine and the direction for the growth in the Dhamma. Then this is conducing to inclusion. Everyone comes together. Harmony. You listen to each other. You don't argue with each other. You may have disagreements, but it doesn't lead to disharmony. You have agreeable disagreements, right? You agree to disagree, or whatever you want to call it, and that's fine. We are always going to be disagreements, and that's okay. It's just we do it in the right way here. And you have a sense of unity, everyone moving together in a positive way here. So now let us get to these 6 qualities, saraniya dhamma, qualities to be remembered, warm-hearted qualities. We're now getting to the heart of the matter of what metta is about. And firstly, a mendicant consistently treats their spiritual companions by or with bodily kindness, both in public and in private. This warm-hearted quality makes for fondness and respect, conducing to inclusion, harmony, unity without quarreling. It begins with simple things like bodily kindness. I have to admit, sometimes as a monk you're very lucky because you are the recipient of a lot of bodily kindness. Here is bodily kindness right here. It's nice, and so they make a cake for you to invite you back next year, and say, that's kind of bodily kindness. But so you're all very kind to me, and my fellow monastics the other day, they washed my robes. We came back from a long walk with with Bobby, and I didn't ask for it. They offered to wash my robes, and that's beautiful, right? So you have that bodily kindness for each other, and so this is kind of the foundation of this whole path: acting towards each other with bodily kindness, and especially you will notice here your spiritual companions, your brahmacharya. So of course, we treat everyone in the world with kindness, but the most important thing are your spiritual companions. It's interesting that it points that out, right? And of course, for the Sangha, that means that it is your fellow monastics, that you treat with kindness. And when you have that within the Sangha, it means that you have harmony within the Sangha. Then, of course, that harmony tends to spread out to society around as well. Most important kind of harmony is in the Sangha, because that's where you're supposed to practice. You have to live together with the people who are closest to you in harmony. That is the most important thing, because then you'll be able to live properly. Sometimes the people who are closest to you are the most difficult ones to have metta for. You know what I mean? Because they are so close, right? It's not. I don't mean to say that wife and husband don't love each other, but we also get on each other's nerves a little bit. Yeah, this is kind of the way of family life. When I go back and visit my mother, she's now 86. Yeah, I still feel a little bit like the son when I'm with my mother. Yeah, still feel some of the old patterns. Still kind of not so much anymore. I'm being unfair to my mother. She's a very nice old lady, but a little bit like that, right? Because you're so used to each other. And it's very hard not to fall into those patterns a little bit. And this is the problem. So if we can have metta towards the people who are closest to us, in many ways we've done the most difficult thing here. So then you start with the Sangha, the people who you're with all the time. Have metta towards them. Treat them kindly by bodily action. You notice the word here? Consistently. Yeah, consistently. All the time, not really breaking that. It's not kind of, I give you 1 cup of tea a day and then you'll be happy. It's not really that, yeah? You do it all the time, consistently, moment after moment, all the time. That is the point. You don't miss any opportunities. And one of the things that you will notice is that once you start to look for opportunities to be kind, there comes a point when you become obsessed with being kind. Yeah? It's like you are looking for opportunities all the time. How can I be kind? Because you understand the importance of this. So it's like it becomes an obsession. If you're going to have an obsession, be obsessed with kindness. And that obsession is the obsession that leads to the end of obsessions, right? So it is the right kind of obsession. And it's like you become this merit junkie here, yeah? Trying to make merit, doing good things at all possible opportunities. And this is a beautiful thing to do, being obsessed with this. And then you become very consistent in your conduct because of that. Both in public and in private. You don't behave one thing in public when everyone is looking, and behind closed doors you treat them in a completely different way. Yeah, you are consistent all the way through. Even then, when you are completely by yourself, just by yourself, you may do things with integrity because of the broader kind of implications of what is going on. No one is even looking, but you put things in the right place, or you do some kind of bodily action that in the broader context actually is a kind of kindness towards people around you, even though they may not ever see what you're actually doing here. So there's integrity there, integrity in your conduct. It goes through your entire kind of way of thinking about the world, and you become really obsessed with trying to do the right thing here. It's always at the back of your mind. This is the meaning of your life. Everything in your life revolves around kindness. Everything is about that. Professional life, family life, spiritual life, absolutely everything here. So this is where it begins. And this is already quite difficult. It is not easy to do these things consistently. And so already you are, trying something which is actually hard to do. It is not hard because you don't understand what you have to do. You understand really well. It is hard because the mind changes so much. And it's very difficult to keep the mind onto that purpose, that aim at all times, because before you know it, the mind is going in the opposite direction. You become obsessed with worldly things. You're going to get things done, right? It's important to get things done. And when you get things done, well, sometimes you don't treat other people with kindness, because you got to get it done. Maybe you don't need to get it done. Maybe it doesn't matter so much. Those worldly things are not so important. What is more important is that you get the underlying spiritual qualities right. Far more important. Get your values right. Remember long-term investment, not short-term investment. Okay, so maybe you solve that problem in the world, and then tomorrow another problem arises. And in this way it carries on and goes on. So don't sacrifice your spiritual life to get worldly things done. You're getting it the wrong way around. It's better to sacrifice some things in your worldly life to get your spiritual life done. Because you want to invest for the long term, things that are really going to be beneficial for you. So you can see how even this is hard. It's difficult. It takes a lot of reflection even to get this right. But please focus on this. This is just foundational for the path to work. And as you focus on this, things starts to come together in a very powerful way as you do that. So this is one of these warm-hearted qualities that makes for fondness, dearness, for affection, and it makes for respect. You're creating respect by doing this, and affection, and it conduces to this feeling of being together, working together with things. Harmony, inclusion, unity, and all of these kind of things. What a marvelous and powerful thing it is, something so seemingly simple. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break right there.
Thank you, Ajahn. I would like to ask about the commentaries. Is reading the commentaries important to understand the suttas?
Where are you?
Here.
There, okay, sorry, okay. I was looking around trying to find out who's talking. Okay, good, Is it important to read the commentaries to understand the suttas? Generally speaking, the suttas are fairly self-explanatory. For example, when you read a paragraph like we're just reading here now, it's quite easy to understand, right? You don't need any kind of great details or commentarial explanations. However, sometimes there may be, especially if you are reading it in the Pali language, sometimes the Pali words may not be clear, because Pali, no one is speaking Pali anymore, and the meaning of the word may be kind of lost. It may mean something unusual in certain contexts. And so sometimes the commentaries can clarify the meaning of words. So it can be helpful, especially if you are a translator of the text. It can be very useful. In fact, it's necessary if you are a translator of the texts. If you are just reading things in translation, are the commentaries important? Most of the time not, because you just follow the translation of the person. And if they have done a good job, then you will get a reasonably good meaning. Sometimes you will find that the translator gets it wrong, and that is the cases where you may have to investigate more clearly. If you are in doubt about the translation, you may have to investigate for yourself. You may have to look to the Pali, then you may have to look to the commentaries and etc. to kind of help you out. However, it's very difficult to read the commentaries because very little has been translated. It's very hard to get to the commentaries. So often you have to ask an expert to translate for you, or you have to look to those parts of the commentaries that have been translated, like the Visuddhimagga, for example, has been translated. So then it can be helpful. But there are many, many things that are, in theory, helpful. The question is whether it is really important or required. So one of the things that, in theory, is very helpful is to know all the pre-Buddhist literature, like the Vedas. Because, and the reason for that is because the suttas are spoken in a certain context, the context of the society of India at the time. So if you understand that society better, then you can also understand these texts better, because they were spoken to Brahmins, they were spoken in that cultural context. And so people who are very serious about the suttas will also read sometimes these Vedas, the Upanishads and these kind of things, to give that context. Would I recommend that to you? Probably not. It's too much. It's too hard to understand. Hard enough to understand the suttas, let alone to understand that. Sometimes it can also be helpful to look at some of the things that came after the suttas, because then you understand the further development, and you can make some distinction between the suttas and what came afterwards. And then you can make, if someone tells you something, you will know the difference between what is later and what is early, and what you should focus on. But most of the time, I would say, read the suttas. Already, that is quite demanding. There's a lot of suttas. And one of the great things about the suttas is that they are like a coherent whole, a complete thing. And very often, one part of the suttas will illuminate another part of the suttas. A lot of the time, you will just need to read somewhere else to understand what is said in one place. And that is the best place to find an overall understanding, is to have a broad reading of the suttas. So if you're into it, that's what I recommend. Read broadly in the sutta as much as you can, and forget. I wouldn't worry too much about the commentaries. To be honest with you, it's just too difficult to find access to them. Any other questions, comments, arguments? Everyone is really happy? Okay, not everyone. No, that's good. Yeah.
It's a curiosity question.
Please, yeah.
Because I was reading the first few pages of your book, and it says that we have to reprogram ourselves from this to this. So I guess when we come to a retreat like this, every one of us should also ask questions, because when we ask questions, then we are changing ourselves in small little ways to become to follow the path in some ways. Now coming to that, then I was thinking, when we're talking about our karma, right? How does the karma actualized in my present life? I was thinking, is it that in my past life I did some good things last? It's like you're building up, your bad karmas is below, then the good karmas is building up. And then the last one, the last stage that we do is actualized in the next rebirth. Does it go like this?
Not necessarily, no.
You don't think so?
It is complicated. As always, if one of the suttas to read to understand this is called Majjhima Nikaya 136, the Maha Kamma Vibhanga Sutta, the longer sutta on the analysis of karma. And according to that sutta, sometimes something that happened a long time ago can ripen to decide your next rebirth. It's not the last thing, but something that was long before that. And so it's complicated. It depends on many factors.
This is the part which I don't quite get it.
The
word ripens. The karma ripens. Well, what do you mean?
It means that, for example, for some reason you remember something you did a long time ago. It comes to your mind randomly. It's like what it's like sometimes. Suddenly something you did as a child comes into your mind. You think, why is that coming? And the reason it comes is because of, again, all kinds of cause and conditions. And so sometimes when you die, even something you did in the past life can come back to your mind. So you remember that, and then your mind is affected by that. That's what it means by ripening. And so then you may feel very bad about that. Oh, I killed somebody in the past life. Wow, that's terrible. Then you feel terrible, and bang, you go off to bad rebirth because of that. That's what ripening means. You connect with that thing, and then when you connect with that thing, it leaves an imprint on the mind, which then decides. The consciousness is affected. You feel either happy or bad. Well, if you feel bad about yourself, you drive yourself into bad rebirth. That's ripening. And so that's how it works. So, but also I have to say, you are right about asking questions. I think it is very much part of the Buddhist path, and I recommend people to ask questions. Don't always have to ask questions. Sometimes you may be able to figure it out yourself by thinking about it. But I think sometimes it's better to ask. Better to ask a little bit too many than not asking enough. Because when you ask questions, you engage with the material a lot. You actually are reflecting on it. Yeah, you're trying to find out. And as long as you're coming from that positive viewpoint, I think it's great. And in the suttas, the Buddha talks about questions and answers. It talks about the idea of discussing the Dhamma. It's called Dhamma Sakaccha. Yeah, we saw this before in the Mangala Sutta. Yeah? So this is part for the thing. You see this in the suttas everywhere. The monks are asking the Buddha questions, all the time, and the Buddha patiently answering. So this is a very important part of the path. So I really recommend that. There's another question behind there, Bobby. Yeah.
Bhante, can I ask a general question?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm confused between Upasika, Anagarika, Samaneri, Meichi, so many.
Okay. Ooh, this not coffee. It's a ginger drink. It's quite spicy. I like spicy, so it's okay. Just so the difference is just different degrees. Yeah. So upasaka means someone who keeps the 5 precepts. Upasaka and upasika, male and female. Someone who is a disciple, a follower of the Buddha. Anagarika it means a homeless one. So this is someone who often lives in a monastery, and they usually keep the 8 precepts. Yeah, this is an anagarika. This is kind of a word that we use often in the Western world, where someone aspires to become a monastic. So before they become a monastic wearing brown, they are anagarika, a homeless one in the monastery. Meichi is a word used in Thailand. It's a Thai word which means an 8 precept nun. It's like an anagarika, except they call them Meichi. And the difference is that anagarika is usually short term, but people are often Meichi for life. They spend their whole life as 8 precepts, and they are kind of monastics, but they don't practice. They only practice 8 precepts. Samaneri is a 10 precept person. You are ordained, you're already a monastic. You're not a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni, you're not a monk, full monk or nun, but you are a novice monk, a novice nun, it's usually called. Traditionally, this is for people who have not yet become 20 years old. For people who are less than 20, you can only become a bhikkhu and bhikkhuni when you're 20. There's some exception for bhikkhunis, but for bhikkhus it's 20. So these are just different degrees of practice and commitment to the path, if you like. Then there are ramikas. Ramikas are people who live in the monastery keeping 5 or 8 precepts. This is the word that was used at the time of the Buddha. They are Vayavachakaras. Vayavachakara is someone who provides services for the monks. There are Kapiyas. Kapiya is another kind of person who usually follows the monastic around and kind of makes things allowable. These are all words for Buddhists of various kinds who do various kinds of duties in various situations. Have you got more categories you want to hear about, or are you? Sayalay, in Burma, so every country has their own kind of people. So yeah.